Tears and prayers tonight for a Fort Myers family as a young woman who's overseas on an exchange program in Israel has been reported missing after going on a late night swim with some of her friends.
Teniya Jones is the 19-year-old who just graduated from Dunbar High last year, and her family, who does live down the street, was there at the house with her. Her cousins, her aunts, her uncles, her grandfather, all there to help her. Some of them drove from hours away to be with her during this difficult time. Now, Teniya's mom did tell me she was nervous about letting her daughter go overseas in the first place, but she decided to let her go because she decided she couldn't deny Teniya this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
At first, my initial thought was I didn't want her to go. It was so far away. She's never been out of the country. And I have faith that she's going to be brought home. She's going to be found.
It's the University of Kentucky, which worked with a partner organization for the exchange program in Israel. Now, tonight, the university says it's doing all it can to support the search for Teniya, and they are going to keep the campus updated. And Patrick, I'll be in touch with you once I have more information on what's going on.
For headlines this evening, tonight many are heartbroken to learn about the drowning of a UK student who had been studying abroad in the Middle East.
19-year-old Teniya Jones was going into her sophomore year at UK, but this summer she studied Arabic as part of an exchange program in Amman, Jordan. Saturday, the week before she was to return to the States, Jones and 2 other students traveled to Tel Aviv and went swimming in the Mediterranean Sea. While there, officials say all 3 got pulled away in a strong current. Jones never made it back to shore with her friends. Her hometown newspaper reporting today that Israeli officials found her body earlier this morning.
And wherever she's at, I can guarantee you she knows that it's a house full here.
Relatives huddled together at her home in Fort Myers, hoping for the best over the weekend. Some of them questioning if Jones really went swimming or if something else happened.
She never used Sanibel Beach or Fort Myers Beach or Bonita Beach.
Back in Lexington, UK officials are helping Jones' family travel to the Middle East. We've learned just this past December, her brother Samuel died in a double homicide in Florida. Now her family is dealing with the unthinkable again. Relatives say Jones, who had a sense of adventure, had recently been accepted into the pre-med program at UK.
Going to Jordan was a big deal for her. That's what she wanted. Like, even when me and her first talked about it, like, you know, it's not my decision. I'm not her mom. I'm just her cousin. But I contemplated it in the back of my head. Like, I was like, that's the desert. That's the other side of the world.
Covering the news in Lexington, Lee Searcy, LEX 18 News.
The report in 2000 showed father and son in Gaza caught up in Israeli-Palestinian crossfire. The 12-year-old was later pronounced dead, hit, said France 2, by Israeli troops.
This Israeli soldier has in his sights a Palestinian, apparently unarmed, standing a few meters beyond the separation fence. The video seems to have been shared on social media by one of the soldiers.
Yes!
We don't know who the victim is or what he was doing in the time before he was shot. Israel's military says it happened in December. The delight the sniper's colleagues take in hitting their target doesn't change the fact that the Israeli military won't consider the sniper's actions unlawful.
The short video from a security camera in Holon, a suburb of Tel Aviv, has swept Israel and sparked waves of angry protests against police. At the center of the video is Corporal Demas Fkade, a 21-year-old Ethiopian soldier you see in uniform. He says he was trying to reach his house just a block away when police stopped him from crossing the street. There's no sound on the tape, so it's not clear what either party said, but Fkade says he was asking for permission to cross when the police officer grabbed his bike. Fkade says he urged him not to use force, but by then, another officer joined. You can see Fkade pushed to the ground and held down. There's no way to explain the feeling. Only God and I know how I felt, he says. First of all, it's degrading because you're a soldier who is serving the country. You're giving all of yourself, and it's degrading.
Israeli troops took pictures of themselves while the child was being abused. As you can see in these pictures, one of the soldiers is holding the 13-year-old Palestinian boy in a chokehold. They assaulted the child after shooting him in the leg with a rubber bullet. He was among a number of children on whom Israeli soldiers opened fire in the Ezariya town in the occupied East Jerusalem Al-Quds.
Moments later, Fkade gets to his feet. He's seen picking up a rock. He eventually puts it down, and the situation appears to quiet down. Israeli authorities say both officers have been dismissed. The incident is still under investigation. The video set off protests across Israel in the Ethiopian Jewish community. Nearly 1,000 demonstrators gathered in Jerusalem on Thursday night, followed by hundreds more on Sunday in Tel Aviv. Protesters blocked off major streets in Tel Aviv, snarling traffic during rush hour. Police fired tear gas and used water cannons to disperse the crowd, as what was a peaceful afternoon became a violent night. Authorities and Ethiopian leaders urged restraint, but it was well past midnight when the final protesters left Rabin Square. I am for the demonstrations, but I'm against violence, Fkade says. Whether it's on policemen or civilians, nobody should get hurt. It's a pity. The protests were not just about the video, but about what Ethiopians see as years of discrimination at the hands of police and authorities. The video was the tipping point. Fkade and community leaders met with the Prime Minister to try to ease the unrest in the community and begin to address the bigger issue of what Ethiopians see as discrimination. He expressed interest in us, in the family and the community, Fkade says, and to help as Prime Minister, he will now do the right thing. The Prime Minister says he saw the pictures and was shocked by what he saw in the beating video. The Prime Minister says Israel can't let things like this happen again. All sides here hoping the protests are the catalyst for change.
What's going on, YouTube? So I decided to revisit and do a follow-up video regarding this Teniya Jones incident, is what I'm going to call it right now. To summarize, for those of you who did not see my last video regarding this incident, Teniya Jones was a 19-year-old University of Kentucky sophomore who was in an exchange program at the University of Amman in Jordan, when she decided to go with two friends, alleged friends, to Israel for the weekend, last weekend to be matter of fact. And she wound up going missing after what they claimed was her being out with them swimming in the surf in the dead of night. Within a few hours, her body turned up, washed up on shore with the body of a young Arab man, now believed to be a young Palestinian man. Their bodies were found in close proximity to one another. I'm hearing within half a mile along the same beachfront, but in different sections. So, at first I was saying that I wasn't going to revisit this, but I was reading some of you guys' comments, and some of you bring up some very good and interesting points. That combined with the fact that I've been doing further research into Israel as a collective, crime in Israel, the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict that I already knew about. And I found some very interesting things that have influenced me to want to go further into detail about this. But before I get to that, I just want to thank the brother that donated. I really appreciate all of the donations, all of the help from all of you brothers. I've been doing this seriously for 4 years, since 2014. I've been on YouTube as a whole since 2006. But I really appreciate the support. I love making videos for you guys. This is my favorite pastime. It's what I do now. And I'm going to continue doing that, for absolutely free. But any of you that, feel it in your heart, feel generous enough to donate to the Brian Salon Show, if you like my show, you can more than do so down at the description box. There's a link down there. It's the very top. It is my PayPal link. In addition to that, there are also other links to my BitChute channel, my Black Avenger TV channel, my Gab TV channel, and my 2 YouTube alternate channels. Make sure you're signed up, like, share, and subscribe, all of them. And again, if you want to donate, the PayPal link is right at the top up there. Again, brother, thank you so much for your donation. Now, back to this subject of Teniya Jones. Like I said, I found out some very interesting things. And some of the things that some of you brothers, including a couple of you who said that you lived in and around that region in the past, sometime in the past, I don't know if it was recent or not, it really got me thinking. Now, upon looking further into Teniya Jones, I'm gonna back away from the whole swirling gone wrong, divest from Blackistan, went wrong deal, because I don't really think this has anything to do with her going after some non-black men. From what I can ascertain, again, none of us were there, none of us know what happened. This seems to be a case of a relatively decent young lady that was intelligent and, well, in some aspects, like I said, going for a midnight swim, probably not the best idea in the world, but it looked like a girl that was, basically making good grades. She got inducted into this program, and she just wanted to go and explore the world, and this was her way of doing it. And she trusted some people that were familiar with the region, and she went across the border into Israel, and unfortunately did not return alive. It doesn't look like this was one of those demented females like here on YouTube that is just going around looking for some non-black male to deify. I think this was a honest, good student that just wanted to go and have a little fun in the surf, and just wanted to just wanted to have the experience. And things went horribly wrong. Now, the issue is, we don't know whether what went wrong was the official reports coming out of Israel and the media, or what people are suspecting happened, and the rumors of what may have happened on social media. Okay, it's for the fact that two bodies were found the same day by Israeli rescue services, emergency and rescue services, on the same beach. And this is just a coincidence that these two bodies that didn't know each other just washed up on shore, and they both drowned. something, like I said, something strikes me as strange about this. But I felt like this is an opportunity to remind black people, not just black women, but black people as a collective, and really people in general, okay? Whenever you go to another place, okay, it is really a good idea. In some cases, it's vital to do research on the place that you're going. I told the brother earlier in the post on the last video, because I had agreed with something that he said, that you need to understand something. You know, all of us, you know, we like going, you know, we want to take a vacation every now and then, you know, to some exotic place, you know, and say that we saw the world. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not, let me, let me iterate something. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this young girl or any black female going, getting her education, you know, going overseas, seeing the world. That's her business. If that's what she wants to do, if that's the field of endeavor that she wants to pursue. But a couple of things you need to understand before you go to somebody else's country, okay? One of them, you need to understand the laws. Two, you need to understand the people that you're going to be around and that you're going to be dealing with. Three, you need to understand, you need to do research on whatever place or places that you are going, okay? You know, most importantly, crime statistics, you know, the types of weather that they have, even the prices of hotels. You know, there's certain things that you need to know before you just, you know, you should never go anywhere where you're unfamiliar, you know, and just start goofing off and just start exploring. I'll give you a perfect example of this. I'm from the city of Chicago, born and raised. Well, the suburbs, born in the city, raised in the suburbs, okay? I know that the south side of Chicago is bad. That's where all the shootings and the killings happen. That in the west side, okay? So whenever I go up there to visit family, I stay in the home of whoever I'm visiting. I don't go out. If I have to, you know, if I'm going to be there for a couple of days, like I visit my favorite uncle or something, and I have to be there for a couple of days, I go all the way into the suburbs. You know, if I need to pick something up from the store and go back to his house, I don't stop at none of those little quickie marts or you know, convenience stores or nothing like that, or gas stations around there, because it's too high of a possibility of getting held up or caught in some gang gunfire and catching somebody's stray bullet, okay? Whenever I do business in Chicago, I stay north of downtown. Why? Because all the shit popping off, you know, between Latino but mainly black gangs and black thugs and black degenerates is happening south and west of downtown. I don't do any business south of downtown. So just some Hispanic motherfucker gonna have a unmitigated gall to tell me that I was having a conversation with a couple of months ago. Oh, you got to deal with everybody, man. When I told him that, oh, no, the fuck I don't. No, the hell I don't. Fuck you, motherfuckers. I ain't got to deal with y'all. No, the hell I don't. Y'all want to act like savages. Y'all gonna kill each other. I ain't gonna have nothing to do with it. I'm gonna be far, far away. Why do I bring this up? Because a tourist, no matter where they are from in the world, if it's their first time going to Chicago, and I've actually heard of horror stories like this, they get off on the Greyhound bus station, you know what I'm saying, or they get off at Midway Airport, and they just did this spontaneously. They don't have, you know, a planned route to their hotel, or they don't really have any plans on you know, where they're gonna go, what they're gonna do. A lot of them, they'll make the mistake of just randomly taking a CTA bus, Chicago Transit Authority bus, just hopping on it spontaneously and just seeing where it goes. And they get off right dead center in the middle of the hood, in the middle of Inglewood or some fucking where they don't know where the fuck they are. Now here you have, you know, some tourist from Sweden, you know, in high boots and a cowboy hat, you know, that think they're on some fun adventure about to get fucked up because they don't know that they in the hood about to get robbed. That's my point, okay? When you have to understand, and unfortunately, I don't think this young lady understood this. Whenever you go anywhere, okay, you got to understand, if you've never been there before, it's new and exotic and maybe exciting to you. That don't mean that just because it's new to you, that does not mean that it's clean, okay? And when I mean clean, that means clean of trouble, okay? And clean of troublemakers. Now, I've never been to the Middle East. I've never been to Israel. But what are some of the things that I now know about Israel? And some of it I've already known. Some of it I just found out within the last 24 hours researching this case. Number one, I know that Israel and the Arabs are at political and oftentimes military war with one another. There are hundreds, thousands of cases of both Palestinians and Israeli Jewish settlers being kidnapped by the other side and turning up dead days later. Not saying it has anything to do with this case, but they hate each other. So, you know, they're Arab gangs that kidnap Jewish settlers, you know, along the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And there's Jewish gangs and Jewish extremists that kidnap and kill Palestinians, okay? Now, in addition to that, I saw this article that I'm going to read for you guys. Turns out more than 500 people have been listed as permanently missing in Israel since the second Intifada ended, which was all the way back in 2007. If you don't know what the Intifada is, go look it up. Now, 2007, that is, you're talking about what, 11 years. You're talking about a country that only has 8.5 million people. They have fewer people than the state of Illinois, one of our states. And in 11 years, they have more than 500 people listed as permanently missing. That's a little bit fucking odd, okay? And more than 100 of those people are listed as foreigners, meaning non-Israeli people. It's not like you can kidnap somebody from fucking New Jersey and take them all the way to fucking Arizona some damn where. I mean, the place, I don't even think Israel is fucking 50 miles across. So where are all these people that are disappearing going? I mean, with 500 people missing, and you know some of their disappearances had to involve foul play, Israel will keep a lid on this in their press so that they don't look like the flawed human beings that they are. So let me go ahead and read you this article that I found by the Jerusalem Post dated December 22nd, 2016. Years after disappearances, Israeli families continue to fight to find missing relatives. Daniel Minivisky was 35 years old when he went out for a smoke in October 2014 and never came back. Daniel is just one of over 500 permanently missing people in Israel. While the chances of finding Daniel are slim, his father, Yehoshua Shuki Minivisky, 63, says he has not given up and is pushing the police to place more attention to the cases and families of missing people. You don't wake up one day and say, okay, I'm done searching now. Families need closure. They need to know what happened. Minivisky is chairman of Without Them, an association made up of families with missing relatives. The association has gathered 50 of around 550 families who have a family member still missing. Police Commissioner Roni Al-Sheikh, along with Zionist Union MK Eyal Ben Reuven, met with representatives of Without Them on December 14th in an attempt to build better police relations with the families of missing people who often criticize the police for inattentiveness and the lack of resources dedicated to the cases. 500 missing people is a huge problem. This is more than just a few people or families, Minivisky said. Yet according to Minivisky, if a soldier is lost or killed, the state dedicates massive amounts of effort to recover the body, while missing people and their families are left largely to fend for themselves. There are around 500 persons on Israel's permanently missing list. A police spokeswoman declined to give an exact number. While thousands of missing persons reports are filed with the police every year, around 60% of cases are solved in the first 24 to 48 hours. You have to understand that sometimes a person just wants to be gone for a few hours or their phone dies, said a senior police official who spoke on the condition of anonymity. But if the missing person is not found within 2 days, the chances of finding him or her drop significantly. Many families spend large amounts of their own money paying private investigators and organizing media campaigns. Volunteer search groups, some equipped with dogs and jeeps, are also active in filling what many families believe is a gap in police attention. In the meeting with al-Sheikh, without them demanded more police cooperation with the specialized volunteer units who often operate without police guidance, including increasing police manpower in the missing persons police unit and communication between police and the families, especially after years have gone by. Once the police stop looking for the missing person, the family is left alone. The family needs support and they need communication, Minivisky said. During the meeting without them, representatives presented their feelings about how the police deal with the issue of missing persons and handling the investigations of missing people, said Thursday's statement from the police. There was an emphasis on long-term cases. Without them is also advocating changes to Israeli law, which currently lacks a legal status for missing persons and economic assistance for the families. The chances of finding someone alive after 15 years is very low, Minivisky said. But every family needs to know what happened to their family members. Unquote. So what does this article tell us about Israel? Just doing simple research of reading this one article from the Jerusalem Post from 2 years ago. It tells us that, number one, there is a highly abnormal number of people missing in a country with a tiny population of just 8.5 million people, not even 9 million people, not even the size of the state of Illinois population-wise. For 500 people to go missing in just 11 years, that would strike a lot of people as somewhat odd. All of these people didn't just go out for a smoke and never return, as, you know, they said in the intro of the one guy, okay? Some of these people got kidnapped, and God knows what happened to them after that, okay? The other thing that we found out reading this is, if something happens to your ass where you disappear, you or your loved one disappears, you're pretty much on your fucking own. And that's if you're a citizen of Israel, let alone a damn foreigner. Again, they'll cover the track. They cover and defend their own, but they just don't have the resources, or they just don't hold it as priority, you know, to look for missing people like we do over here in the United States. See, that's another thing you need to understand. When you go to these, you know, other places, you know, somebody kidnaps you or robs you, they don't have the police do not have the same resources, vast resources of equipment and money, you know, to go looking for your ass or help your ass, you know. I mean, if something happened to you in a place like Jamaica or Haiti, you just fucked up. Yeah, they got police over there, but they ain't gonna spend too much time looking for your ass because they don't have the money or the resources to do so. It's the same thing in Israel. You know, their primary focus in Israel is national defense against, you know, their Arab Muslim enemies that surround them in other countries. You know, they, you know, little shit like, you know, people getting robbed and murdered that, you know, are tourists or foreign exchange students. They ain't gonna spend too much time on that shit. Cause half the time they don't care, and the other half the time they just don't have the financial resources to do so. So these are things that you need to understand before you call yourself exploring the world, okay? This world ain't nice. It's not a pretty sight, okay? I know we got a lot of fucked up problems here in the United States, but there's a lot of things that we got right or righter than the rest of the world does. And you need to understand that. Just because it's Israel and the Jewish state don't mean that there ain't, you know, fucking shady shit. It don't mean that they don't have they Pookies and Ray Rays or even Ted Bundys over there. Okay? Another thing that I found out was that the Israeli government is extremely, they are extreme nationalists, you know, which always pulls the hypocrisy of people attacking these so-called white supremacists and white nationalists. Israel is one of the most bigoted, biased, racist, sovereign countries on the face of this planet. Now they hide behind the veil of, look at what happened to us to the in the Holocaust, and thus because of what happened to us in the Holocaust, we can do no wrong. Israel only cares about Israel and Israeli citizens. Okay, I have read just within the last couple of hours of all kinds of crazy stuff happening. People being robbed over there, people being jumped. There was even this one case where this British tourist got the damn police car backed over her, okay, and seriously injured her, and the police covered the whole thing up like it never fucking happened. They said that she walked out into the middle of the street and got hit by a fucking car when everybody saw the damn police car back over. Okay, Israel, and I actually kind of wish black people were more like Israelis. Okay, Israel, they defend Jewish citizens that are accused of committing crimes against outsiders. Okay, they cover up for them, especially if they're connected to somebody in the high government. They cover up cases of crimes of Jews in Israel against outsiders, foreigners that are in Israel, whether they're visiting or whether they're Arab Israelis or whether they're Palestinians. Okay, now don't get me wrong, Israel does have law. Okay, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's on trial right now for corruption. Okay, but that's Jews committing crimes against other Jews. When it comes to Jews, and specifically Israelis committing crimes against other people, ain't nobody gonna say shit. Okay, and like I said before, Palestinians turn up dead, and disappear all up and down the Gaza Strip and the West Bank all the fucking time. Okay, I'm not saying that has anything to do necessarily with this case with Teniya. I'm not even saying that Israel is some haven, some cesspool for crime and violence and death. It is a very unstable region over there. But again, this brings me back to what I was saying earlier. You have to know some of the background. I mean, you got to understand, just because, the Bahamas is an exotic island, that doesn't mean that they don't have crime on that island. Armed robberies, murders, kidnapping, gangbanging. Same thing in Israel. They have crime there. They have fiends and perverts there, just like they do anywhere else. It may not be on as large of a scale as the United States, but that don't mean there ain't somebody with the potential to be a serial killer or a rapist. Ain't gotta be, mean that this is some broad government conspiracy cover-up or no shit like that. It could just be a single sick in the head individual. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, upon my research, I found out that these two young girls, these two little Jewish girls, they went missing earlier this year. They left out of the house to go to school and never came back. Their family never heard from them again. A wise man once said, never sit with your back to no door. Okay? In this case, never go to somewhere where you don't know anything, you don't know jack shit about it. Okay? You don't know what's going on there. You just know they got a nice beach and you want to go hang out with these two people and swim at night just to say that you did it, and you think that's all cute. You don't know what the fuck's going on there. Okay? Also, if this young lady and her friends had been doing some research, they would have seen that rip currents have dragged more than 3,000 people out into the Red Sea since Israel was first announced as a state of its own in 1948. Now, 3,000 people for a little tiny ass country is a lot of damn people. What does that tell you? That tells you that the waves, along that seafront are very powerful. And it's probably dangerous, and there probably were warning signs up, in Hebrew or whatever. So the point is, nobody knows what happened to this young girl, although I do have a hypothesis based on the evidence and the hearsay that I've heard, okay? But whether the riptides got her or some evildoer got her, okay, the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, she didn't know what she was getting herself into when she went there. Now, many American tourists, I'm sure, have visited there and been just fine. But if you're going to go and, do something spontaneous, and I would say swimming at midnight, if that's what happened was spontaneous, then you need to do your research. If you care about your life and your well-being, if you have somebody, back stateside that cares about you and worries about you and needs you, you need to do your damn research, because you go around the wrong fucking corner in certain parts of this world, nobody will ever hear from your motherfucking ass again. Ask Natalie Holloway. Ask her. She'll tell you. To this day, don't nobody know what the fuck happened to that girl. You know what I'm saying? So, and still nobody's saying who these two friends were, except they're described as a white female student and an Arab American male student. Okay. Now, based on, what I've seen, the facts of things surrounding this case, the argument and the possible physical altercation outside of a gas station. Israeli police get there a few minutes later after somebody calls it in. Nobody's there. The gas station is right across the street from the seafront promenade. Later on that night, these two friends, two people who claim to be her friends, they report her missing, and then, they show up at a police station in dry clothes. And then her body washes up on shore with this Palestinian kid that they claim is completely unrelated. This is what I think happened, okay? And you guys can tell me what you think. I don't know. I'm not saying this is fact. This is strictly hypothesis based on the facts and even the hearsay and the rumors of this case. I think that Teniya Jones met a couple of people in Jordan, at the University of Amman, and she befriended them, and one of them suggested, well, let's go to the seafront, along the Mediterranean Sea, in Israel for the weekend, for fun. She went with him. You could see pictures, obviously, of her right there at the beach in the daytime, just hours before she went missing and turned up dead. And so it appears, because you could see this picture, this was taken at 11 o'clock in the morning. So apparently what this tells us from social media is that she was hanging out at the beach all day with these so-called friends or by herself. Okay. That's the other thing that's really strange. In her pictures, you see her with other people except at the beach, even though the story claims she went there with two friends. She's only taking pictures at the beach by herself, and this is early in the morning in Israel. So she was hanging out at or around this beach all day on Saturday. This is last Saturday, okay? Another thing that I think is very important to point out in this case, that actually leads back to what I said earlier about, she and we don't know who may have been actually watching or stalking her while she was on that beach. Is, if you notice the timestamp on the photographs that she's taking, this is right around 11:30 in the morning, but it's right before noon on a Saturday in late July, in the dead of summer. Okay, what's the one thing that you notice in her pictures? Okay, in the picture she's taking, you don't see anybody in the surf, and you don't see anybody walking along the beach or in the background of the pictures that she's taking. Okay, which means either A, she's very good at intentionally blocking the background out, or B, more likely, she was on a part of the beach that was very off to itself and not usually occupied by other people. Along certain coastlines of certain waterbeds, there are certain areas, like I know there's sections of the lakefront in Lake Michigan in Chicago where, the beach is either closed off to people for one reason or another, or it's in an area that's just not attracting beachgoers on a routine basis. So, I don't know if this girl, decided to, and another thing, they said that she was with two friends. What friends do you see? The pictures that she took here are of her all by herself with nobody in the background. She appears to be on a part of the beach that's completely alone, or where she's completely alone and to herself. Now, of course, people will tell you, even in an area, in a neighborhood that you're familiar with, never be alone by yourself, especially, you're a young, relatively attractive, female, off to yourself in a desolated part of anywhere, whether you're near waterbed or whether you're, on the street somewhere. That's not a good look. Another thing I contemplated is these two so-called friends or somebody else may have done something to her earlier in the day than what we're being told, and dumped her body in the water, and these so-called friends that were part of the setup, or just weren't paying attention, may have only reported it, hours later when it got late at night and she didn't show up, where they were expecting her to show up. See, if she was alone in a part of this beach, because at this time of day, noontime, the dead of summer, I showed you the clips. This is what the beachfront where she went missing and her body later turned up. This is what the beachfront looks like in summertime in Tel Aviv. It's crowded with people. Okay, so what part of this beach is she on where there's no people? And see, somebody may have seen her off to herself, and they may have thought this is a perfect opportunity to, do something nefarious. Now, another thing that a lot of young females don't take into account, if you look at Teniya Jones, she ain't no dime piece or nothing like that, but she's a nice, cute, well-made, nice-looking young girl. She's put together pretty well. Okay, she don't know who the fuck was watching her, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of nods on this. She don't know who the fuck was watching her all that time she was out there at that beach, which, from these pictures, looked like, it was by herself, at least at this point in time. Okay, if she turned up missing later in the night and she was there early in the morning, she could have went to whatever hotel they was. That's another thing. They didn't even say she checked into any hotel. It looks like they literally just went over on a bus, didn't book no hotels, and literally just went straight to the beach and just decided they was going to stay at the beach all weekend. That's what it appears. I don't know, but that's what it appears. Okay, she does not know who was watching her that whole time that she was on that beach. Okay, she don't know who was following her. Okay, so what I think happened was sometime later on that night, because there's no proof, no evidence that they booked any hotels. I think that she may have decided to go, walk. She was probably back and forth between a couple of places and the beach in close proximity to one another. One of them was this gas station where this Radio Tel Aviv claimed somebody called in and said that somebody had reported a physical confrontation to police that went out over the radios of a foreign-looking female, Nakar Paforta, which in Hebrew means female foreigner, and a undescribed male. I think that she was possibly somehow she got separated from her friends, or after a little while of hanging out with each other, they either introduced her to somebody that one of them, possibly the male, knew, or that they encountered, because you know how these young people, these naive ass young people are. They'll go on these spontaneous ass trips, and then they'll meet somebody and think it's cool to just hang out with a complete stranger. I think they either met somebody along the way. Either they or she met somebody along the way, struck up a conversation with her, and, you know, it was a guy that probably, you know, started trying to get in them panties. Okay. And I think that they both went to I think they met on the beachfront. And I think that they went, you know, they walked possibly together to the gas station. Okay. After, you know, her two other friends had went off somewhere doing whatever they was doing. Possibly fucking, I don't know. And whoever this stranger was with her at that gas station started trying to make advances toward her. You know, the whole Me Too movement thing. And she may have resisted his advances, you know, and got the whole, you know, black female with an attitude thing going on, you know, because black females, they have, like the Egyptian troll, no pun intended, they have this fail safe, or what they think is a fail safe, where they'll act really verbally aggressive and then the guy will leave them alone. You know, and I can understand, you know, a young, somewhat attractive girl, you know, out here by herself, this guy starts putting his hands on her. And, you know, these Arabs, even some of these Jews, are known here in the United States for making advances, and a lot of times right in front of black men in their stores and on the streets in the hood, towards black women. You know what I'm saying? And so he starts making advances towards her. She starts resisting. She starts, you know, cussing him out, call herself, putting him in his place. He gets more aggressive, you know, and maybe tries to grab her or something, you know, and she maybe hits him, and now he's really pissed off. You know, now he's swinging on her or trying to grab her and drag her off, and she breaks free running. Okay. Somebody picks this up, either driving past. They didn't say if it was the attendant at the station. They didn't say who the fuck put in the call, but she goes running, you know, across the street. And what does she do? Because she doesn't have a hotel, you know, and she don't know nobody there. She's separated from her friends. You know, she's going to run, you know, naturally to the only place that she's familiar with at that time, that she's known. She's going to run back towards the beach, which is, you know, just across the street from this seafront. I mean, from this gas station. So she runs out there. You know, at this point in time, it's nighttime, it's pitch black darkness, and this guy gives chase. You know, now he's on some other shit, you know. And I think that she thought, she was hoping to lose him in the dark. And she may have, you know, as he was chasing her, she may have panicked and ran out into the surf, ran out into the water. And he either grabbed her, or he was so heated that he ran out into the water after her, okay? And somehow, either in a struggle or with her trying to, you know, swim away, you know, because, you know, she realized he was gaining on her along the coastline. So she figured maybe she could, you know, swim to a safer location, or just stay out there in the water if she got far out there enough, you know, to get away from this guy. And they wound up both getting caught up in a fucking rip current and, you know, dragged out to sea and drowned. That's what I think happened. That is why the reports were that two bodies washed up on shore. While they were looking for her, they found another dead body of an Arab male, okay? And they washed up on shore just half a mile from each other along the coastline. That would be my hypothesis, because, you know, there's no indication, there's been no reporting. Although, you know, like I said, Israel does have they do have a niche for covering things up that happen in their country. Because, you know, when you think of Israel, the only thing you're supposed to think of is the Holocaust that happened to the Jews. So, you know, as some of you brothers had mentioned, there's a lot of shady things that have happened there that don't make, you know, news over here, unless it paints, you know, Israeli Jews as victims. So, you know, we don't know, but there's no signs that there's no reports. I'm not saying that there's no signs. There's no reports that there was any foul play. If I was the family of Teniya Jones, I would have an independent medical examiner do an autopsy on Teniya Jones to determine the cause of death, just like the Michael Brown family did. I would hire a separate medical examiner to do an autopsy, because it appears Israel did not do an autopsy. Now, if they drowned, there would be no indication of, like strangulation or anything like that, but there may be an indication of bruising. The other male's hair on her, they need to compare, they need to get a sample of the body of the other dude, and they need to get his DNA and see if any of his DNA is on her. Okay, because there's just no way that two young people just turn up dead in the same place and they didn't know each other. I'm sorry, and this dude wasn't even one of the two friends. Now, explaining how the two friends, speaking of which, wound up at the police station in dry clothes. Okay, I'm thinking there's one major scenario that sticks out to me about that as a possibility. I think that one or both of them, they knew this guy and they may have introduced this guy to her. Okay, and once they went over in Israel, because if they had been over there longer than her, even though they were American students, then it's possible that wasn't their first time in Israel. They may have had friends in that area, and they called up a friend or just ran into him, and the four of them met up and they got to talking, and then the Arab American student and the white female student, they went off walking one way, and then she just figured that she would walk and talk with this guy for a little bit. Whether that suggests anything more was going on or not, I don't know. But I think at some point she got separated from her friends that may have introduced her to this guy. And once they realized that he may have had something to do with her disappearance, especially the one that introduced her, they probably started to get scared and cover up their tracks, especially the Arab dude. The Arab dude they were talking about, because Israelis already don't like Arabs, and he probably would have thought, he probably got scared and thought that, the Israelis would arrest him just on suspicion of having something to do with her disappearance. So they started covering up, and they came up with this cover story, and they went to the police station to report her missing, but they didn't mention this other kid that they had met or introduced her to. And the fact is, none of them actually went into the water swimming that night. That was a fucking lie. They didn't just all three of them go out there and start swimming. I think this is one of the more likely scenarios. I know some you other brothers had thrown some other scenarios out there. Normally I don't do anything with conspiracy theory type shit, but I think there's enough here leading to something more nefarious that happened. Okay, that's why they showed up at the police station in dry clothes, because they were never in the water. But they came up with this cover story that, oh, we went out with our friend swimming in the middle of the night in pitch black darkness, and we all got swept out by a fucking rip current. That's a bunch of bullshit. Okay, I'm telling you that right now. That's a bunch of bullshit. Because if they got caught by the same rip current as she did, how were they able to make it back to shore? And how were they seen on CCTV footage in dry clothes, well dressed at a police station several hours after she went missing? I think they covered it up. I don't think I'm questioning whether or not they directly had something to do with her disappearance, but I think this is the most likely scenario. They either ran into somebody or they introduced her to somebody that one or both of them knew. Okay, once they got to the Israeli beach, and again, she at the very least, and all three of them at the very most, had been hanging out at the beach all day on Saturday. That's proven by her posts on her Facebook. These pictures were taken early, in the late morning time, and she turned up missing when they claimed that they were out there swimming at midnight, which would have been actually Saturday night going into Sunday morning. So they were out there all day, and they may have been hanging out with this guy, for the better part of the day. And he started getting the hots for Teniya, and then he decided later on that night, outside of the gas station to make his move. You know what I'm saying? And I think she resisted it. You know, a fight broke out. You know, she realized she was in trouble. They didn't have no hotel rooms, and she ran back from the gas station to the beach, ran out into the surf. You know, figured she could lose him in the water, and he chased after her, and they both got swept out to sea and then drowned, and their bodies washed up on shore. The Arab and the white student from the University of Amman, they got nervous, especially the Arab guy, and because he probably introduced her to this other Arab kid, and you know, he convinced the white female student to come up with a cover up story, or maybe he lied to her altogether, and they came up with this cover up story that they was out swimming with Teniya, and that's what the fuck happened. Okay, so again, that's my hypothesis. Again, none of us were there, nobody knows, but I think this should be a lesson to anybody, especially these Negroes that's talking about divest from Blackistan. Ain't nothing wrong with divesting from Blackistan. Hell, I divested from Blackistan 10 years ago, and I ain't looked back since, okay? But you have to understand, just like y'all remember when I did that video in Louisville, and I was standing outside the childhood home of Muhammad Ali, and I was getting a little, I told y'all I was getting a little nervous, because I saw some fiendish looking Negroes hanging around that area, you know, and I knew that it was like a hood area. And I got back in the car after only a few seconds, okay? I knew that Muhammad Ali's, you know, the historical site of Muhammad Ali's childhood home was there. But I didn't know what else was there except what I saw, okay? So I didn't linger around there very, very long. I gave y'all a tour in my car, if y'all can recall that. Because I didn't know if this was like just a place where poor black people live, or if this was a place where it goes down in Louisville. Now, another scenario that I was running through was, it's possible that Teniya was walking with this Arab guy and that he wasn't the perpetrator, and they just decided to walk to this gas station, you know, to get some snacks or something. Again, I'm just hypothesizing, I don't know, but they could have ran up on a gang of Israelis, Israeli soldiers, both off duty and on duty, have been listed several times in the press for committing discriminatory crimes against Arabs and Ethiopian and Arab Israelis. They could have encountered some, you know, Jewish extremists that, you know, just wanted to hunt down an Arab and you know, just so happened to find somebody that looked Arabic. And then, you know, this black girl was walking with them, and they could have chased them. You know, a group of Jewish extremists or soldiers or some other fiend could have chased them out, you know, from the gas station into the sea. But that still wouldn't explain, you know, who was having the, you know, who the young man was with the young foreign-looking female, as described in the radio dispatch, that were seen fighting outside of the gas station near the seafront. So I think what Teniya's family needs to do is, because the University of Kentucky, as it said in the report, is arranging for them to go to Israel. Teniya's body is still being held at a morgue in Israel, and while it's customary for both Jews and Muslims to be buried the very next day from when they died, you know, she's not Jewish or Muslim, so they're holding her body. They need to bring a private investigator with them, and they need to have the the U.S. State Department put pressure on Israel to take them back to the scene of where Teniya's body was found, and take them to the scene where these two unidentified male and female were seen in a confrontation near where she was found outside of this gas station. They need to you know, do a connection and run a timeline between what happened at the gas station and between that and when Teniya actually went missing and when her body was actually found. They need to look at the timestamps on her Facebook and, you know, mark the time of when she was first confirmed for sure on the beach, which was Saturday around 11 o'clock a.m. They also need to find out, you know, if they booked any hotels. Again, it doesn't look like they did. They need to identify and interview these two so-called friends of theirs. They need to get reports, transcripts from the police for, radio dispatches and communications involving all of the suspicious circumstances surrounding this, from the radio dispatch about the fight outside the gas station, to her so-called friends reporting her missing, to the coordination for the rescue operation, to the reports and investigation of the other body that was found not too far from where she was found, to when her body was actually pulled out of the sea. Because, you can't really trust any of these foreign governments. As I said before, Israel protects its own. And, I really don't hate on them for doing that. But there have been many instances where, if Jews are not committing crimes against other Jews, if Jews are committing crimes against Arabs, or, black Ethiopians, or even foreign tourists, unless they're like a white person from like Great Britain or one of those Western European countries, or the United States, the Israeli government is going to cover that shit up, because their thing is they're going to protect Jews no matter what. And they've had that attitude since after the Holocaust, since, when they tracked down Albert Eichmann, or whatever his name was, the architect of the concentration camps and gas chambers during World War II. But just because, Jews, have a history of being done dirty, and nearly exterminated, that doesn't mean that they don't have to stand trial for their crimes. Now, again, they're not just Jews that are citizens of Israel. There are also what are called Arab Israelis, okay? And Arab Israelis are basically Arabs that are either Christian, usually Christian, but there are also some Arab Muslims that are allowed under certain circumstances to be citizens of Israel. So, if it was indeed an Arab that had something to do with Teniya's death, that person is still an Israeli. The other reason why Israel, will just feed the family and the American news media a cover story is because they don't need the negative press. Israel wants to be seen as this pure sovereign state that, is a victim of their Arab neighbors and of, a cruel history of Nazi extremism. They don't want to be seen as a place where, you can go to and become a victim of crime. You can go there and get robbed, kidnapped, raped, beat up, lynched, drowned. They don't want that type of, even if it was a rip current to snatch this girl up, they don't want that type of negative attention. When people think of Israel or Jews, they think of, something holy. They think of something pure. They think of religion. They think of, the conflict where the Jews are painted as the good guys and the victims. They think of the Holocaust. They don't think, well, Jews are as human as anybody else. They're capable of making mistakes and committing crimes and doing evil, dirty things to people. That doesn't mean all Jews or most Jews are doing that. That doesn't even mean that Israel statistically is a dangerous place. That just means that, like I said before, they have their Pookies and Ray Rays. They have their Ted Bundys. They have their Adam Lanzas just like anybody else. They're human. They're no better. All these goofy motherfuckers in the church talking about they the chosen people. They ain't the chosen nothing, okay? They just as human as anybody fucking else. And they're capable of committing, on an individual basis, there are people in Israel that are capable of committing human crimes, okay? Now, of course, if this girl had disappeared in Jordan, people would have been talking about, how some Muslim radicals got her, and did something to her. If she was over here, it would have been probably would have been some nigga shit. Because she's in Israel, it's just a cover story. Oh, she went swimming at midnight in a fresh weave and drowned. No, bruh. No, I'm sorry. Normally I don't care what happens to black females, but, my interest is kind of peaked right now. I want to know what the fuck happened, primarily because this happened in Israel, and Israelis are always getting away with shit because they're Jews. So I want to know what the fuck happened. The Jews can never be painted in a negative light, especially, you know, something like this that has international incident implications written all over it. And I noticed something else just within the past few hours before I produced this video. Now, Teniya Jones, that case where her body washed up on shore with the body of another male, it was trending not 24 hours ago. If you go and look on Google now and type in her name, Teniya Jones, you can't find anything about the case unless you type in specific words, Teniya Jones, Israel. You can only find one fucking article that comes up at the top on Google. Don't believe me? Go look it up yourself. Or maybe there's something wrong with my internet, but I'm wondering if Israelis' intelligence agency Mossad has something to do with that. They're talking about all these foreign countries hacking, you know, American companies, but you can almost find no search results. Now, just yesterday, I was pulling up all kinds of stuff about this case. Now, the Facebook post didn't disappear. That was last night. I told y'all about that. And now you can barely find anything on Teniya Jones' body washing up on shore in Israel on Google. Gee, I wonder why. The Israeli government just gonna, and the Israeli authorities, they just gonna come up with a story, you know, having done no autopsy on this girl, no investigating, you know, any of the circumstances surrounding her disappearance or death. And because it's the Jewish state, the media over here in the American government just gonna take it at face value and just take their fucking word for it. But see, the Jews, they have that kind of power. Whereas I guarantee you, if it was a white girl or a Jewish student that went missing in Lebanon or Jordan or Saudi Arabia, some damn place, it would be some very serious investigating going on. The United States would probably try to send the fucking FBI over there. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And this falls in line with both Jews committing crimes, and this falls in line with, you know, Israelis and Jews in general around the world keeping a lid on the degenerates, the individual degenerates of their group, their tribe of people. David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, that was going around in the 70s. Some of you guys are old enough to remember that. David Berkowitz, guy that was going around shooting young couples in the dead of night outside of nightclubs and stuff just because he was mad he couldn't get no pussy. He'd walk up with a 44 Bulldog Magnum and blow the brains out of some pretty brunette or blonde-haired female. He was a Jew. But you notice whenever you hear references of that notorious serial killer that terrorized New York City in the late 70s, David Berkowitz, son of Sam, you never hear one single iota of a thing about him being a Jew. Why? Because Jews as serial killers is not sexy. It's not attractive. It ruins this religious, you know, romantic fantasy that westernized culture through their religious beliefs of Catholicism and Christianity have about Jews being the pure chosen people through which the so-called Son of God came into this earth known as Jesus Christ. It ruins this idea that Jews are victims because of the Holocaust, and thus they can do no wrong and they need to be protected like black females. See, don't let Brian Solange get started, because I'll get all up in that ass. I don't care what group. I am well versed doing this to black females, and I will do it to Jews as well, as you can see. Don't let me get started on your ass, whoever you are, because I'll break that shit all the way fucking down. Now, doing my research, one of the things that I found out that was highly odd, and one heck of a coincidence, if it is indeed a coincidence, is that last year 26 bodies of young African girls believed to be refugees from Somalia and Ethiopia were found in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the odd thing about that was the official reports were that these girls actually drowned when the raft that they were on overturned. But according to an Al Jazeera report, the raft was actually found intact, and at the time that the girls' bodies were found, the sea was actually calm itself, meaning the sea was not, there weren't like violent waves or anything. Also, strangely enough, there were no male refugees, and when these refugees go to flee a country and jump on rafts or boats to try to, go across some type of body of water, to go to other countries, they usually don't, separate the men from the women. But the only people that were found on this raft dead were all young African girls, and it said African girls that appeared to be between the ages of 14 to 18 years of age. So they were very young, which is ironic because Teniya Jones was only 19 years old, and they didn't find the bodies of any males. There was no signs that there were any male refugees on that particular raft. Like I said, it was intact, and the sea appeared to be calm. Now, it was believed that these young girls were trying to head towards possibly Turkey or one of those southern European countries that borders the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. Another thing that I found out interesting is, for security purposes, for national defense, the Israeli Navy actually patrols the Mediterranean Sea, and there have been reports over the course of decades of Israeli military war crimes against Arab and African refugees and immigrants, both on dry land and in the water. Everything from beatings, tortures, and even unconfirmed, to be fair, unconfirmed reports of sniping and shooting at people going across the Mediterranean for fun, for sport, sniping them for sport. And the claims by the Israeli military in some of these cases was that they thought that these were enemy combatants, possibly from Hezbollah or Hamas, trying to use the Mediterranean Sea to breach Israeli borders. But they could clearly see that these people were unarmed and not on, any type of military vessel, that they were, on some raggedy makeshift put together boat or raft. So it said that these girls drowned, even though a majority of the bodies were found on the raft itself, not floating in the water. And if it had overturned and, if they drowned, then there would be some indications of them floating in the water. So, see, the problem, and they may have indeed drowned, just like Teniya Jones may have indeed drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. The problem with this is too many discrepancies. Why was it all African females, young African females? Why were there no males found? Okay, why were the seas calm? Why was the raft right side up? Why were most of the bodies found on the raft itself? And why are so many black females dying in the Mediterranean Sea as of late? I'm usually not a conspiracy theorist, but you got to raise your eyebrows at shit like this. Now, to be fair, the bodies were actually recovered by the Turkish Navy, Turkish authorities, but they would have had to, going across the Mediterranean Sea, they would have had to have gone across the part of the sea where the Israeli Navy patrols, okay? Which means at some point they could have been detected by Israeli radar or naval vessels or personnel. That does not mean that they were messed with, but that doesn't mean that they weren't messed with either on their voyage to try to get from North Africa to Southern Europe. And the raft could have been in the sea with the bodies on and around it for days before it finally washed ashore, even weeks before it washed ashore, or it got close to the shores of Turkey. See, one of the other problems is it's very hard in this part of the world, outside of what not just Israel, but these Middle Eastern Arab countries, see, they control their media. They're not like over here, okay? Israel and those Arabic countries, they control what comes out of their news. Just like North Korea and Russia, they don't just let any news story go out and, you know, hit the world news wires. The only news that comes out of there is the news that they want you to hear, especially when it comes to any type of relations they have, negative or positive, with the rest of the world. That's, you know, with other races and cultures and countries of people. That's why when people think of Israel, the only thing they think about is the Holocaust, and they think of their confrontation with their Arab neighbors. But what people don't realize is there's a lot more to Israel, both negative and positive, going on there. You know, like I said, there have been war crimes against Arabs, against African refugees and immigrants. There have been reports of Israeli military, both on land, air, and at sea, breaching the borders of other countries like Egypt, making unlawful incursions into ethnic Arab villages. In Israel, if you think about, you know, what happened at the airport in Entebbe back in the 1970s, when the Israelis went to rescue several hostages of an El Al plane, which, in all fairness, I guess, you know, they were justified in doing. Israel has a history of breaching other people's sovereign countries without their permission. Jews also have a history of terrorism. Before the state of Israel was enacted in 1948, they were blowing shit up when Palestine was still a British colony. That's actually where the Palestinians got the idea from. They figured, well, if Jewish extremists are blowing shit up, demanding, you know, their own sovereign state, and it worked for them back in the 1940s, shortly after World War II, then maybe we should blow shit up and we'll get, you know, our own sovereign state called Palestine. Where the fuck you think the Arabs got that idea from? There were Jewish terrorists that were terrorizing the Middle East, you know, and Arab countries and towns and villages. And they put enough pressure on the British to pull out of there and, you know, allow the UN to declare Israel a sovereign country of its own, even though the Arabs had occupied that land for thousands of years. But see, once again, Israeli terrorists, Israeli military accused of war crimes, these are things that these are things that you're not going to hear in the mainstream media, because the Israeli government isn't going to allow it through the media in their country, and to the American media that's, you know, for the most part controlled by Jews and liberals. It's not sexy to put that in the headlines. Of course, you're going to hear about, you know, Arab extremists like Hamas and Islamic Jihad shooting at and launching mortars into Jewish villages on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. But what you're not going to hear about are Israeli military sharpshooters sniping little Palestinian children along the roads of Jericho and leading into Jerusalem. You're not going to hear about that, because Jews are seen as these holy chosen people, you know, historically and biblically, that westernized culture and society, you know, based off of their Catholic and Christian religions, have this romantic fantasy because, you know, this is the race of people that the Christians claim Jesus Christ was born into. You tie that in with, you know, the Nazi Holocaust, and, you know, the Jews, they're untouchable. They can do no wrong. And so when they do wrong, people look the other way. The news media has a gag order put on it. So I don't put it past the Israelis, okay? And it may not have been them. It may have been, you know, one of those Arabs, but I don't put it past the Israelis that they had something to do with these 26 African girls turning up dead in the Mediterranean Sea last year. And I don't put it past them that you know, either their military or one of their individual civilians had something to do with the death of Teniya Jones. We still don't know definitively who the hell these two so-called friends are that she went to Israel with. This is just a story that was fed to the American media that picked it up off of Israeli media. The Israelis have hands that are just as dirty as those Arabs that they hate, and these Americans that finance them. You can believe that. Another thing that isn't talked about in regards to Israelis is that their government is full of sexual perverts. And we know this because Israel is one of the largest exploiters of women in the world. Talk about hashtag Me Too. A few years ago, they came out with this official government policy to don attractive young Israeli female soldiers on the front of magazines. This was official military policy that was put in play, not the least of which was a cover that came out on Maxim magazine, the version of Maxim that's released in Europe. And the purpose of doing that was to attract tourism to Israel by showing off their sexy women in uniform. Okay, now these are young women who serve their country. It is not only customary, but it's law that every able-bodied male and female have to serve at least 1 year in the Israeli military or 2 years in the IDF, which is the Israeli police forces. So because every living, working, breathing female human being that's an Israeli citizen has to serve in the military, naturally they're going to be attractive women in there, probably more so than in other militaries. So they actually use these policies to exploit young women, and these young females, being young and dumb as they are pretty much all over the place, they were more than happy to oblige to, show off their bodies while being active duty soldiers in Israel. Okay, but again, because these are Jews, nobody talks about this. So we know that Israelis, all the way up to the highest levels of government, are sexual perverts that exploit women. So it would, that is another thing that feeds into the theory that, it is possible that, Teniya Jones, being a relatively, cute, attractive young lady that could have easily passed for a black or African mixed Jewish girl, could have been, attacked or accosted by someone or a group of people in Israel, either Arabic or Jewish, and something very bad happened. Now, there is some new information, and there is some, information from yesterday that I pulled up that, still just doesn't sit well or add up in this case. For one thing, her mother saying it's unusual for her to go out at night, and, be swimming at night, and that usually she only stands in the surf. She doesn't actually go out, into the waters and swim, especially being out at night. The other thing is that it took her friends, we now know, 3 hours to report her missing. Now, this is where it doesn't make sense to me. Okay, if they were all out swimming and they all got caught by the same riptide, why would she be swept out to sea, and her friends that were able to make it back to shore only report her missing 3 hours after the fact? I don't think if one of my friends or family members, got ripped out to sea and I actually saw it happen because I was in the same water swimming with them, that I'd wait 3 hours before I reported it to somebody that could possibly help her. And then I show up at the police station in clean, dry clothes as if I wasn't swimming in the first place. Another thing is, I heard another video on YouTube of a black female, and she had brung up something interesting You know, because I'm not very familiar with black women and that fake hair that they put in their head. But they said if you look at Teniya Jones's Facebook of her on the beach earlier in the day, she had on a weave, and the weave appeared to be a fresh weave. And black females, I've heard this for years, they may get in pools, you know, or sit around, you know, on chairs near pools, but